I kind of want to see one of these. It's been a hot minute. The Toilet Terror. 5 Bizarre Deaths, number 17 from Tragedy Tales. It's been a while since we've seen one, so I kind of want to see one. Just to kind of like, change it up a little bit, after the Deme situation.
As Ben Franklin once famously said, there's only 2 things guaranteed in life: death and taxes. And he's right. All of us one day will meet our end, but what we don't know is how and when.
That's true.
All of us hope for a peaceful death, maybe surrounded by family and friends, but if you've watched any of my videos, you'll know that some don't get anywhere close to that. Some people die in the most horrifying, crazy, and
Oh, I
downright
saw this
bizarre ways
one.
possible. I'm Ryan from Tragedy Tales, and in this video, we're going to take a look at 5 more bizarre cases that sound completely made up, but I can assure you they are very, very real.
Huh?
So strap in and draw the curtains, and let's get right into it.
How bizarre can they be? Number 5.
Now, bathrooms are probably the last place that most people would expect to find themselves in serious danger. We all use them every single day without ever really thinking about it. But slips and falls in bathrooms are actually surprisingly common, especially amongst older adults. Wet floors, hard surfaces, and confined spaces can turn an ordinary trip to the bathroom into a fatal encounter in a matter of seconds. But with that in mind, this case takes us to the town of Istra, a small city situated around 50 kilometers west of Moscow. Living in an apartment there was an unnamed 6-year-old retiree man. Now, I've done a lot of research, but very little information was ever released about the man himself, but reports stated that he lived alone and was a healthy man enjoying a relatively peaceful retirement.
One
day
this is like
in January of 2018,
shit.
The man was chilling at home, minding his own business, when he decided he needed the toilet, as you do. According to reports, the man entered the bathroom, and as he did, he slipped on the wet floor. In most cases, a fall like this would probably result in a broken hip, a broken wrist, but unfortunately, as the man tumbled into the bathroom, he fell and landed directly on a toilet brush that was sat on the floor. Somehow, in what must have been an almost unimaginable sequence of events, as he fell, the handle of the toilet brush penetrated through his right eye socket and became lodged inside his skull.
Holy shit, that is straight up literally no joke Final Destination shit. Oh my god. New fear unlocked. Holy cow, dude.
At this point, the handle would have been deep inside his brain. Absolutely shocking. He was rushed to a local hospital near Moscow, and doctors snapped this horrible photo that I can probably only show to patrons.
Wow.
Doctors immediately realized that they were dealing with one of the strangest trauma cases that they'd ever encountered. Now, your eye socket is actually one of the most vulnerable areas of the skull. The bones that are surrounding the eye are significantly thinner than many parts of the head, meaning a forceful impact can allow objects to penetrate much deeper than you would even imagine.
Oh, fuck that, dude.
Medical staff quickly realized that they couldn't simply pull the brush out. The handle had entered through the man's right eye socket and traveled that deep into his skull and his brain that removing it incorrectly would have caused catastrophic damage.
Ah, dude, no
Even experienced
shot.
surgeons were reportedly stunned by the case. Serious head injuries are unfortunately not uncommon in hospitals, but a patient arriving with a toilet brush embedded through his eye socket is something that they'll never encounter during the rest of their careers. Doctors immediately started to try and save the man's life. For a brief period, it actually looked like he might survive. Surgeons successfully removed the brush, and initially, the operation appeared to be a success.
Okay, but what happened?
But despite the efforts, when they tried to wake the man up, he had fallen into a coma and sadly never regained consciousness. Over the following days, his condition gradually deteriorated before he eventually died from his injuries. When they tried to pull the toilet brush out, it shattered bone all inside his brain, which doctors say must have caused catastrophic damage.
Oh, dude, that's scary, dude. Fuck that, dude. Nah, dude. Oh my god. That's terrifying.
As most of you should be aware, MRI machines are among the most powerful medical devices found in hospitals.
I shit you not. Is this gonna be like a Final Destination shit with this shit? No shot, dude.
Some people think of them as little more than oversized scanners, But in reality, they're essentially a giant spinning magnet that creates a magnetic field. This allows doctors to see detailed images of inside the human body without surgery or the use of radiation. Sounds good, right? This, however, has its downsides. The magnetic field generated are so powerful that metal objects cannot be anywhere near them while they're active. Even relatively heavy metal items can be pulled forward towards the machine with tremendous force, and a penny can become a bullet.
A penny?
With that in mind, this case takes us to January the 16th, 2023, in the city of Sao Paulo, Brazil. That day, a 40-year-old man named Leandro Mathias de Noves went with his mother to Laboratório Cura, a medical imaging facility where she was scheduled to undergo an MRI scan. Leandro was simply there to support his mother during what should have been a completely routine appointment, both of them completely unaware that this simple appointment would turn fatal. Now, Leandro worked as a lawyer, but he was also known for his huge support of gun ownership. Across TikTok and Instagram, he built a following of roughly 12,000 people, where there he posted regular content relating to firearms and legally owned many guns himself. He was all about guns. If he wasn't doing lawyer work, he was talking about them. But that day, as his mother prepared for the routine scan, staff reportedly followed their normal safety procedures. Both Leandro and his mother were instructed to remove any metallic objects before entering the MRI suite, and later signed documentation acknowledging the safety requirements. Believing everything was okay, Leandro stepped into the MRI suite, forgetting one big thing: his loaded handgun that was tucked into his waistband. Somehow, despite all the warnings and safety checks, this had completely slipped his mind. What happened next unfolded in the blink of an eye. The second he walked into that room, the scanner's magnetic field immediately locked onto his weapon. Before he had any chance to react, the handgun was violently pulled from his body and slammed into the MRI machine with force. As it did, it just so happened that the trigger was pulled,
No shot.
the bullet was fired, and it struck Leandro in the abdomen. Out of all the places it could have landed, it struck him. Of course, the best place to be shot is in a hospital. Medical teams rushed to Leandro's aid, but the bullet had traveled through vital organs, causing devastating internal injuries.
Ooh.
He was transported for emergency treatment and remained hospitalized at São Luís Morumbi Hospital
no idea
as
why
doctors
you would,
fought
to
to
be
save his
honest.
life. Sadly, however, you're watching a bizarre death video. Over the following weeks, his condition gradually deteriorated. On February the 6th, nearly 3 weeks after the accident, Leandro died from his injuries.
Jesus Christ.
The hospital say that they maintained all the safety procedures. They state that they did nothing wrong and that Leandro was fully to blame for his death as he failed to declare the gun to staff. In a strange, ironic twist, the man who was all about guns, who advocated for them in their spare time, who told everyone that they needed to get one, lost his life to one in a crazy 1,000,000-to-1 accident.
That's a crazy fucking
Now, over
bizarre
the years
death.
of running this channel, I've covered several horrifying MRI accidents. In one case I covered, an oxygen cylinder was pulled into a scanning room that broke open and suffocated the individual with pure oxygen.
What?
In another, a heavy metal necklace that someone was using as a weight training thing got pulled into the scanner, resulting in a brutal death. But in this case, what are the chances that the bullet actually hit him? That bullet could have hit anywhere. It could have just gone into the floor or hit a window. But that day, Leandro was simply unlucky, standing in the wrong place at the wrong time, and it cost him his life.
Dude, that's terrifying. Extra. Oh shit. What are we getting?
This entry begins on December the 1st, 2025, in the city of Recife, Olinda, a large bustling city situated on Brazil's northeast coast. Now, the morning of December the 1st, it was sweltering. It was boiling hot, even by Recife standards. 55-year-old father of two, Ronald Montenegro, did what he always did when the heat made outdoor running unbearable. He packed his protein shake, he laced up his shoes, and headed to RW Academia, his local gym situated just minutes away from his house. Ronald was described as a nice guy, and he was the president of the town's Paseo dos Benecos Giant Museum. This museum's home to huge 15-foot tall paper mache and cloth puppets, which are a traditional part of the town's carnival every year. While paper mache and cloth puppets were his day-to-day, Ronald was also a weightlifter. He was a familiar face at his local gym. He'd enter with a smile and leave dripping in sweat. A workout well done. But on that fateful day of December the 1st, tragically, it would be his last. That day, he arrived at the gym and began his workout as he usually did, starting on the treadmill before moving on to weightlifting. Eventually, he decided it was time for a bench press.
Oh.
All on CCTV, you can see him pumping the iron. You can see he's fine, he does a session and warms up his arms to do it again.
He's savvy. He tries to add more weight to it.
Then he sits down and prepares for one last set. Lays down and readies himself, and he goes for it. And then, all of a sudden, the bar slipped out of his hands straight onto his chest. Unfortunately, Ronald had been using what they call a suicide grip on the bar, which allowed it to slip down onto his chest. In shock, he was able to break free from the weights and tried to walk away, but in front of the gym, he collapsed in agony. Absolute horror unfolded as his heart then stopped. The entire staff of the gym did everything they could as paramedics rushed to the scene. They provided CPR and did mouth-to-mouth, and Ronald was rushed to hospital. But sadly, despite the best efforts of the medics, he passed away soon after. The impact of the weight was enough to cause his heart to go in an unusual rhythm and then cause it to stop. The gym made a public statement shortly after, stating that the entire team provided immediate assistance, acting promptly on specialized aid. They extended their deepest condolences to family and friends, saying that Ronald would always be remembered with respect and affection by all those who were part of his journey. But this was horrifying, and one that I will definitely remember and learn from. I genuinely didn't even know anything about a suicide grip, so now I've googled it, I will never ever be doing that in the gym again. I didn't even know this sort of thing could happen. I had no idea that you could have weight on your chest and cause your heart to stop beating. Maybe that's me being naive, but yeah, this is the death that just comes out of nowhere. And to have it captured on camera.
Well, good thing for me specifically. I don't train too much literally on upper body strength, so when it comes to that, I can't even. To be honest, I can't really like lift that. To be frankly honest, so he should have asked to look out if he is doing if he's lifting more weights. Yeah, he should have asked for a spotter at least. I was thinking his rib cage broke and pierced his heart. No, it skipped the beat basically on his heart himself.
So next time you're at the gym, make sure you wrap your thumbs around the barbell, because this was shocking and it could happen to anyone.
Oh no. Ooh, God. My chest.
Every day, millions of people walk through shopping centres without giving them a second thought. They're places that we associate with grabbing lunch, doing a little bit of expensive shopping, meeting friends, or going there simply to kill a few hours on a weekend. Most people never even consider them dangerous, but this case might just show you otherwise. With that in mind, this case takes us to Sydney, Australia, on January the 6th, 2017.
Well, he put his hand
around this time,
a
71-year-old man named Bernard Gore and his wife Angela were visiting family in Sydney from Tasmania during the Christmas and New Year period. The couple had been married for more than 50 years and frequently travelled to Sydney to spend time with their children. Bernard was a former bread delivery driver and a barber who loved walking. While visiting Sydney, it wasn't unusual for him to spend several hours each day exploring the area on foot. Now, this is quite impressive considering that Bernard had recently begun experiencing the early stages of dementia. He'd been prescribed medication to help manage the condition, and despite this diagnosis, lived a very good life. This was all leading to January the 6th, 2017. That day, Bernard and Angela planned to meet for lunch at Westfield Bondi Junction, one of Australia's largest shopping centres. It was a completely ordinary arrangement. Bernard often headed off on his own to enjoy the mall before meeting back up with his wife later. After decades of marriage, this was something they'd done many times before. That morning, Bernard left roughly 20 minutes before Angela and made his way towards the shopping centre. However, when lunchtime arrived, Angela sat there waiting for Bernard, and he never showed up. At first, she wasn't overly concerned, thinking that maybe he'd stopped for a coffee, maybe he'd wandered into a store and lost track of time, or maybe he'd just simply forgotten that they agreed to meet. She waited for a while before beginning to search for herself. She checked many of Bernard's favourite spots and walked through the shopping centre looking for him, but there was no sign of him anywhere. As the afternoon wore on, concern slowly turned into alarm.
Oh, hell no.
That evening, Bernard's family contacted the police and reported him officially missing. His daughter visited Westfield and spoke directly with security, providing them with Bernard's description and a photo of him and details about where he was last seen. At this point, security personnel began reviewing CCTV footage and searching the shopping centre for any traces of him. Unfortunately, due to a series of mistakes and assumptions, investigators were led in the wrong direction. Despite Bernard being considered vulnerable, security staff only reviewed a small fraction of the available cameras and incorrectly concluded that Bernard had never even entered the shopping centre that day at all. That information was then passed on to the early search efforts and drifted attention away from the shopping centre itself. Days then turned to weeks, police appeals were issued, and family members were desperately searching for answers. Bernard's wife and children were left wondering how a man could seemingly vanish without a trace in the middle of Australia's busiest urban areas. Then, on the morning of January the 27th, a maintenance worker entered one of the stairwells and made a horrifying discovery.
Oh.
As he walked in, there he found Bernard sat at the bottom of the stairwell of a fire escape, one that he'd entered 3 weeks earlier.
So
Bernard was discovered slumped down in a semi-kneeling position. Nearby were several of his personal belongings, including his white hat, his handkerchief, his dentures, a comb, glasses, a wristwatch, and a $5 note. It wasn't until then, when investigators conducted a more thorough review of the CCTV footage, that Bernard's final known movements were finally established. The footage showed Bernard walking into the mall, walking around the mall, and then at 12:50 PM, it showed him wandering into fire door L407. This led to a fire stairwell inside the complex, and once the door was closed, it could not be reopened from that side. This trapped Bernard in a vast network of passageways that were hidden behind the shops, one that the public never usually get to see.
What?
This area was described as something of a maze, containing countless fire doors, passageways, and confusing signage that spread across the enormous complex. It's like a real-life backrooms.
What the fuck?
Bernard remained trapped inside the complex, wandering around, trying to find his way out, while family members, police officers, and shopping centre staff searched for him elsewhere.
So he
Evidence
was stuck in
suggested
the
that
back
Bernard
rooms.
would have been alive for some time after becoming trapped, meaning he could have spent days waiting for someone to find him. He must have become disoriented while attempting to find his way back to public areas of the building. Nearby, investigators found a chair and later theorized that Bernard may have spent time sitting and waiting for help before eventually collapsing forward.
Dude, that fucking sucks, dude. That actually does fucking suck for you to go out like that, to be honest.
As he wandered confused, what Bernard didn't realize is that there was an exit to freedom just down some stairs at the end of a corridor. But being in the early stages of dementia, as well as being totally confused, he must have just missed it.
Damn.
An awful conclusion for his family, who had made several appeals to find him ever since he went missing precisely 3 weeks ago today. Police forensic crews have been here since 8:30 this morning, which is when Mr. Gore's body was found in a fire escape next to high-end stores such as Jimmy Choo and also Louis Vuitton. He had arranged to meet his wife and daughter here, but obviously did not show. Mr. Gore was visiting from Tasmania and suffered dementia, so he was simply helpless, navigating the labyrinth of shops here, and Sydney's heatwave over the past few weeks only heightened fears of today's tragic result.
Medical experts could not determine his exact cause of death. There was no evidence of traumatic injury or third-party involvement. What's particularly horrifying in this case is that despite the extensive search effort, during the investigation, the fire stairs themselves received very little attention. Security staff at the mall searched lifts, escalators, loading docks, toilets, and even the bins, but didn't check the fire stairs. Police conducted only a single walkthrough of part of the stairwell system during the entire 21 days he was missing. An inquest was opened as to his death, and it found that there were significant shortcomings and inadequacies in the search effort. Multiple opportunities to locate Bernard were missed. Investigators concluded that assumptions made early in the case, combined with failures in both the CCTV review, contributed to the horribly tragic outcome.
This could have been avoidable.
Tragedy that's difficult to comprehend.
This actually could have been avoidable.
71-year-old Bernard Gore got lost in a stairwell at Bondi Junction, Westfield.
That's
and he was
scary.
dead by the time he was found 3 weeks later. Today, a coroner criticised the way police and security carried out their search.
When Bernard Gore went missing, police and security didn't look for him properly. Today, a coroner finding the retired barber died from misadventure after getting lost in a stairwell at Westfield Bondi Junction in 2017. Found dead 3 weeks later. He'd taken his hat, shirt and skivvy off. He was supposed to meet his wife of 50 years, Angela, for lunch, and today she heard why he never made it. Police had relied on security to check CCTV and corridors, not knowing it was their procedure to only search monthly. The coroner found communication between police and security was ineffective and inadequate, resulting in poor searches, at one stage leading investigators to conclude Bernard had never entered the shopping centre. The coroner said he hoped lessons would be learned from the shortcomings of the search, and said the distress Bernard must have felt and the uncertainty and anguish his family must have felt is unimaginable.
For 21 days, Bernard's family searched for answers. Police had searched for him all across Sydney.
He was at the
but
store
all
the
along,
entire time.
Bernard was trapped inside the building as thousands rushed by, unaware he was there.
Dude, that's
Just weeks before the trip, Bernard had actually gone missing in Tasmania before later being found safe and in good spirits. Following that incident, his son purchased a GPS tracking watch, but unfortunately, Bernard wasn't wearing it on the day he went missing.
Should have put it in the shoe. They probably should have put like a GPS tracking in the shoe, in my personal opinion. Or like some kind of necklace or something.
Tragic.
That sucks, to be honest. That really does suck. It's like Final Destination.
They say
kinda
health
type
and
of thing,
safety
you know?
is written in blood, that someone has to pay the price before things are made
They
safer.
do, definitely.
And that is very, very true. But sometimes, even with a million safety mechanisms, guidelines, and rules, people still somehow fall victim to workplace accidents. And this case is a horrifying example of that. This entry begins in the city of Borisov, in Belarus, in January of 2022. That month, a 21-year-old, 7-month pregnant woman named Umida Nasarova found herself unemployed. With a baby on the way, she spent the majority of her free time applying for jobs, and eventually one company replied. Umida received a reply from a company called Svarmet. Svarmet had a factory in Borisov that specialized in welding and creating high-quality metal wire before exporting it across the world. She was invited into the factory for a tour to see if she'd like it. Eager to start earning money, she jumped at the chance, and before she knew it, she was walking into the factory. That day, it was reported that no members of staff warned her of any dangers, didn't make her sign anything, and just told her to be careful as they walked through.
Oh, hell
As a
no.
woman and Borisov walked through the factory,
Yeah.
heavy-duty machinery whirred around them. It was a typical factory environment.
Did her hair get stuck or
And
something?
then, just like many of these cases, tragedy struck completely out of the blue. An employee who was showing her how the equipment operates paused to make a record in the register. In those vital seconds, the employee took their eyes away from Umida, and then they heard a blood-curdling scream. When the employee looked up, she saw Umida being dragged into a wire-making machine. As Umida was walking around the factory, the steel mechanisms had caught her long, flowing hair and was dragging her in.
I knew it.
But the worst part
I knew
was,
it.
the way that she'd been caught, her hair had wrapped around her neck. She couldn't get a word out as it choked her. Now, she would have almost certainly suffocated to death, but as the employees tried to turn off the machine, it ripped her scalp off her head entirely, leaving Umida unconscious on the floor. Paramedics rushed her to hospital, and despite their best efforts, she never regained consciousness and died 20 days later.
Oof.
Her family were furious that this happened, claiming that the company broke swathes of health and safety protocols and that they didn't even offer her a hat, despite her long flowing hair. Her family said that they wanted to celebrate her wedding and collect a grandson or granddaughter, but instead, they were burying her. This horrifying, bizarre death led to a legal dispute between the family and the company. The plant agreed to pay funeral costs for her and her unborn baby. This went to court, where a judge sentenced an unnamed plant head of production for failure to fulfill her official duties due to dishonest and negligent attitude, causing the death of a person.
Jesus fucking Christ. Holy cow. These are a lot of Final Destination stuff, not gonna lie.
And last, but certainly not least, we've got a case that's something right out of Final Destination.
Oh god.
But in this case, unfortunately, it was very real and very horrifyingly bizarre. This tragic entry begins on the 2nd of February 2025 in Lowestoft, Suffolk, United Kingdom. Now that day, it was a Sunday, and it was like many other for the people of Lowestoft. Locals were enjoying a chilled end of the week. As it's the UK, the weather was of course drizzly and depressing, as most UK Februaries are, but this didn't stop 32-year-old Saffron Cole Nottage from having fun. That day, Saffron had been drinking at home, finishing a fair few drinks, leading up to the evening. As the sun began to settle beyond the horizon, Saffron and her daughter decided to walk their dog along the seafront. Sounds nice, right? Now Saffron, she was a cleaner, as well as a devoted mom of 6. She was described as bubbly, fun, and full of life. According to her friends, she'd light up any room she entered, and would lift other people's spirits, regardless of how she felt. But that evening, having consumed enough alcohol to be over 3 times the legal limit for driving, she left the house on foot with her daughter and her dog, eager to catch the sunset. Saffron and her daughter arrived at the seafront, and they began walking along it. They began admiring the beautiful sunset, and this is when Saffron had the idea to step over the concrete railings and walk along the actual seafront, the one that was lower down next to the water. This area looked like a walkway, but was not meant to be used as one. You're supposed to walk above, and this is where a normal seafront walk turned right into the stuff of nightmares. As the pair walked along the promenade, suddenly, Saffron, being intoxicated, slipped over on the concrete.
Well, no, duh, of course.
Now she landed on the path and then stood up and slipped again. But this time, unfortunately, she fell headfirst into some sea defense rocks. These rocks were installed recently due to a tide change to avoid erosion. As she fell forwards towards the rocks, her head jammed perfectly between the two, causing her to become impossibly stuck and partially submerged in water. She instantly began screaming and tried to pull herself free, but was unable to. Her daughter tried to help, but again, she was unable to pull her mother free. Passerbys heard the screams and rushed over, seeing 2 legs sticking up into the air. 2 men that were at the scene tried to pull her out for 10 minutes, but they were unsuccessful. Now usually you just wait to be rescued, right? But Saffron had fallen into a sea defense at low tide. Unfortunately for her, it was one of the highest tides of the lunar cycle, meaning sea levels rose rapidly. This meant time was of the essence. At 7:52 p.m, a girl that was walking nearby called an ambulance and told the call handler that a woman had become trapped in the sea defense. Call handlers mistakenly mislabeled the call as an entrapment rather than a drowning, and sent out a team to help, as well as alerting Coast Guards. 6 minutes into this call, ambulances had still not arrived, and the woman on the phone described the worsening situation, telling them that the water was rising at an insane rate. Just 1 minute later, Saffron's head was now in the water, and she became quiet and unresponsive. Despite telling the call handlers that, the caller was told that Saffron should not be moved and no rescue attempt should be made.
That's stupid. That's actually
The
pretty
first
stupid.
ambulance worker that arrived decided on his head that it was too late to save her, despite official guidelines stating that someone can be resuscitated up to 30 minutes after submersion. Ambulance staff reclassified the call as a drowning entrapment, and only then did they alert Suffolk Fire and Rescue, who left the station at 5 minutes past 8, 13 minutes after the initial call.
Are you serious?
When fire crews finally arrived on scene, They attempted to pull her out. Within 30 seconds, she was freed. But by then, of course, it was just far too late. CPR was attempted, but they couldn't revive her. She was declared dead at 8:44 p.m. Her cause of death was drowning.
That's scary.
Absolutely horrifying stuff. Seriously, this is the stuff of nightmares. Put yourself in her shoes. You're walking along, you've had a few bevies, you're with your daughter, with your dog, and then suddenly you find yourself trapped in a sea defense as the tide rises. It's horrifying. Her family were, of course, devastated, especially her daughter, who was forced to witness her mother die
That's
right in
fucking
front of her
traumatizing.
in the most horrifying situation ever. Soon after, an inquest opened on her death to determine if failures on the NHS ambulance teams contributed to her tragic demise. Ultimately, Coroner Darren Stewart ruled that her death was an accident, but he said that there had been possible failures in the emergency services response. In his report, he stated that if ambulances had arrived on time, or if they'd contacted the correct team and not mislabeled it, there is a chance, a slim chance at that she may have survived, but he couldn't say for sure. The coroner had numerous concerns at how the incident was handled by the ambulance service and issued a prevention of future death reports to the East of England Ambulance Service. But of course, that won't erase the horror of what her daughter had to witness. It won't bring back a shattered family, and it won't bring back a mother who was loved by so many.
Ugh, God Lord. That's heartbreaking. Jesus.
But that is the end of the video.
Holy cow.
May everyone featured rest in peace. But bloody hell. Again, some of these deaths I had to read twice because they are so unbelievable. But I have to be honest, I really did struggle to find most of these, so this will likely be the final bizarre deaths, unless there's more cases, of course. But starting at the top, we have the man who impaled himself on a toilet brush. That one I genuinely could not believe. Like, imagine having a dirty toilet brush sticking out of your eye socket. The pain, the shock of it all, deaths don't get much more bizarre than this.
That one's
Then
crazy.
we had the man who shot himself during an MRI. While this case isn't quite the most bizarre death that I've covered, it is very bizarre that the man who advocated for guns lost his life in a strange 1,000,000-to-1 accident. He could have been standing anywhere in the room, yet the bullet hit him and killed him. Then we have the gent who suffered a cardiac arrest in the gym. While gym accidents, of course, aren't that bizarre, to die suddenly like this is. I had no idea what a suicide grip was, and now I do. So if you're going to take anything away from that entry, make sure you grab the bar right, because this was a nightmare. Of course, we can't forget Bernard Gore, who became trapped in an endless loop of stairwells while his family were looking for him just meters
I'm
away.
not gonna lie, this is kind of like 1,000 Ways to Die kind of type of thing, you know? This is what it kind of reminds me of.
Is terribly tragic. There's so many questions here. Why on earth weren't the stairwells checked thoroughly during the investigation? Even the police barely even looked at them. He could and should have been found, or discovered far before the 31 days. By the time they found him, he was badly decomposed, and still, even then, nobody smelled or had an inkling that he was there. So that just goes to show how often employees were actually using these staircases. Now, I didn't mention this in the video, but these corridors already almost claimed a life before Bernard. There was a report of a man who got trapped in there for 3 days before he was found. But nothing was changed, and unfortunately for Bernard, for him, it was fatal. Who knows what was going through his mind as he sat there waiting to be rescued. God, I just wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. Then we had Yumida, who got her hair trapped in a wire-making machine. That one was horrible. What's even worse is that she wasn't just descalped, she was suffocated. She was truly caught between a rock and a hard place. But in general, this should have never happened. Like I said in the entry, health and safety's a thing for a reason, and surely someone there should have seen this coming, especially with her hair just flowing down. It's easy to get trapped into machinery.
That's why you
But
always
I guess the
hide.
employees were just careless, and it cost a young woman and her unborn baby their lives. Then we had Saffron, who became trapped in a sea defense as the tide rose. Oh my god. It's not often I'm flabbergasted at a bizarre death, but this one truly takes the cake. In the UK, these defences are very common, but you never consider them to be lethal. The worst part
curious
is
if he
that her
actually
daughter had to
reported on
witness
that,
this
actually.
all unfold. It's going to haunt her for a whole life. If fire were called to the scene immediately, rather than paramedics, who didn't even attempt to move her, then Saffron may still be with us today. But most importantly, what did you all think of this one? As always, you guys know I read all your opinions.
Fuck that, dude. That's the one with the mom or so, and having a daughter to witness literally her fucking mom dying in front of her eyes is probably traumatizing for the poor kid, to be honest. I do feel sorry for the poor kid. Ooh, a mom of 6 kids. Damn. That is sure is something, to be honest. But yeah. Anyways, that's the end of the video. And honestly, rest in peace for all of them. And peace. God, fucking terrifying, to be honest. Fucking Final Destination over here.